Hello and welcome to the Heatley Stand End podcast. My name is Damian Tardio. Great to have your company on a sorry and sad night for the Carlton Football Club. A night after the afternoon where we've gone down to North Melbourne by 10 points. Another game where we looked home and hosed, 22 points up at three-quarter time. And another game where we haven't been able to run it out, where North Melbourne were able to get on top and march home and put us to the sword. We'll get stuck into all the analysis in a moment, but don't forget, you can subscribe to our podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Just search the Heatley Stand End. Now, it's quite a vexed issue. Is it the coach? Is it the list? Is it the administrators? Is it the board? Or is it all of the above? In my opinion, I think the problem stems with the list. Now, as I said during the preseason, I didn't think our list was good enough to contend for the top 10. Now, I thought we would finish anywhere between 11th and 16th, but I think that needs to be reassessed. I think we are a bottom 4 team. Based on this performance today against North Melbourne, I don't think our next win will come up until King's birthday against Essendon. Next Thursday, we head to Adelaide to start gather round on the Thursday night. Now, Adelaide have gone down to Fremantle by 2 points tonight, but they are a team that has had our measure for the entirety of the Michael Voss era. We think back to the first gather round. We played Adelaide on a Thursday night in 2023. We were embarrassed, smashed. They pummeled us by 11 goals. On to today's game. Many expected a response after the disappointment of last week against Melbourne. We played great football last week to get to 43 points up. But then, as has been the pattern under Michael Voss, we seize up. We get nervous. We go into our shells. We become an introverted, meek football club, and the other sides run all over the top of us. Happened last week. And this week, the unthinkable happened, and North Melbourne got us. We started pretty well in the first quarter. Mark Pitternet got a goal due to some errant ruck work from his opposing number. But North Melbourne, they were with us for the majority of the first quarter. And I looked at the stats, the tackle stats. They were damning. I mean, there wasn't really an advantage from either side on the scoreboard, but in terms of the tackle count, North Melbourne, 36 tackles. Carlton, 13 tackles. Despite the margin at half-time being 3 points, what that said to me was that North Melbourne wanted the ball more than we did. They were desperate. They were committed. And they were trying to do that from quarter one. Whereas I think, as we have been guilty of in the past, thought that we're playing a lower-ranked side or a perceived lower-ranked side, and we thought it was just going to happen. You bring Chera into the side without giving him a run in the VFL. I'll get onto that later because I think it just goes to the very heart of Michael Voss's selection issues and selection integrity. How can you play Adam Chera back into the seniors after being out injured from a hamstring without having him run in the twos? You just put him straight back in the side. It sends the wrong message, but I'll get on that later on. At the end of the first quarter when the siren, I'm pretty sure I saw vision of Michael Voss on the bench. Now, I could be wrong, but I reckon he uttered the words, "That was a good quarter." Now, if that is correct and he did actually utter the words "good quarter," which is what I thought I saw from his mouth, but I didn't hear the audio, he must be delusional. That was not a good quarter of football. It was a competitive quarter of football, but by no means was it a good quarter of football. We lowered our colours to a team, once again, as I repeat, many think will be in the lower reaches of the ladder. What I saw today was unaccountable, unmotivated, and undisciplined football from a team that just doesn't want to work hard. In the second quarter, Cooper Trembath for North Melbourne, their big tall, was on the goal line, unopposed. Ball gets kicked in from a set shot, and Trembath takes the mark as easy as you like. You've got Wade Dirksen, Jacob Wiedering, and Mark Pitternet all in the vicinity of that contest in the goal square, and not one of them thought to go look after Trembath. Lazy, unaccountable football. Trembath kicks a goal. And then you know what I say next? Finger pointing, saying, hey, you got to go pick him up. I'm sorry, but at this point in time, with Carlton where they're at, enough of the finger pointing. Take ownership for your actions. We hear Michael Voss say that all the time in the press conference, that we need to be accountable and take ownership for the things we do out on the football field. You know, a lot of corporate jargon from Michael Voss, which I know that I'm getting tired of and a lot of other Carlton supporters are tired of. But this is true. Rather than point fingers at each other on the field, someone's actually got to say, no, I'll go stand next to Trembath. I'll go make sure that they're not going to get an easy mark on the goal line. I thought it was a positive return from Nick Newman. He just showed how important he was in our defensive structure. His ability to give us some run and clean disposal of half-back. He's one of our better ball users on the list. And for a man who hasn't played senior footy since 2024, I thought it was a really positive return for him. He was one of our best in the first half. I really loved the running of Matt Carroll, his clean ball use as well, which is something we have been crying out for quite some time, especially in the Michael Voss era. Lewis Young, I know he's been a whipping boy of a lot of you for quite some time, and he does have his faults, and today wasn't his cleanest game, but I did like the fact that when Mark Pitternet needed to have a breather, they would run Lewis Young in the ruck. Just get Lewis Young involved in the game, get him rucking, put him in the middle of the ground, and make him follow the ball. Now, half-time, we had our noses just in front. It was 3 points of margin, 6-4-40 to 5-7-37. As I mentioned earlier, the tackle count was well in favour of North Melbourne. To me, that was a massive red flag. Have we come here to play? Well, clearly not, because North Melbourne were the team who had come to play and were hungry for the contest, were trying to will themselves to every contest and try to get to the ball first. And if they didn't get to the ball first, lay a tackle. Whereas it seems like we're scared of the hard stuff. No one wanted to lay a tackle. No one wanted to roll their sleeves up and actually put their body on the line. Harry Mackay. Now, with Charlie Curnow being traded to Sydney, Mackay's a Coleman medalist in his own right, but with Charlie Curnow being traded to Sydney at the end of last year, the major responsibility in our forward line and the onus now falls upon the shoulders of Harry Mackay. This is a man who needs to present, who needs to throw his body around, impact the contest. But 4 minutes into the third quarter, what I saw was the ball in the hands of Will Haywood, Harry Mackay tracking back towards goal, but he stops. And he stops about 25 metres away from Haywood, who's got the ball at half back. Mackay's in the centre square, and he's calling for a pass. I'm sorry, but this is a stupid position for a player like Harry Mackay to be calling for the ball. Rather than stopping in the middle of the ground and calling for a 25-metre pass from your player at half back, Get on your bike, keep running, run towards half forward, force your teammate to kick it long to a half forward position where you can either impact the contest or take a mark and be within goal kicking distance. But Mackay, wanting to get an easy kick, was calling for it in the middle of the ground. Just symptomatic of where Harry Mackay is at the moment. Playing too far up the ground and robbing us of a potent target up forward. Then the last quarter, a complete, unadulterated shambles. I didn't think it was going to happen 2 weeks in a row. I mean, I know our second halves have been poor, especially the last 2 years, but we get 22 points in front. We're leading 11-7-73 to 7-9-51 at three-quarter time. I did not think that we were going to cough this game up. But in the final quarter, North Melbourne made us look like a bottom four side. We looked like a side who were just out of puff, out of ideas, and had no place to be out in the middle of Marvel Stadium. Early in the last quarter, Jacob Wiedering's involved in a marking contest, cops a knee to the back of his head, comes off via the blood rule. We don't see him again for the rest of the afternoon due to concussion protocols. That really throws our defensive structure completely out the window. We looked completely unorganised for the rest of that quarter down back. Cooper Trembath kicks the first for North Melbourne, cuts a deficit to 16 points. But then Zane Dersma gets into the action, kicks his third. They cut the margin again. Brody Kemp gets another, so we're going goal for goal. Kemp gets his third. And then Trembath gets his third. And this is where North Melbourne start to come. They kick the last 5 goals of the game. As mentioned, Trembath kicks his third, then Zerha, then Curtis, then Sheasel puts him in front, sells a bit of candy, slots it from 40, and then Jai Simpkin puts the icing on the cake. We were horrible in the first half of 2023. Like, we were a average side, and the Jungle Drums were starting to beat for Michael Voss's job. He was under the pump. They went to Camp Kerno. They turn it around. Apart from that period of time, I have to say that this stretch to start season 2026 has to be the worst under Michael Voss. We look disillusioned, disinterested, and totally out of our depth. Now, the whole spin that the Carlton Football Club is known for sacking coaches and being so ruthless, okay, that may well be the case when John Elliott was president in the 1980s, when he moved on Percy Jones and Robert Walls got the arse and Jezelenko, the proud son, got sacked. And then he moved on Wayne Britton and then he moved on Wayne Britton in one of his last decisions as president before hiring Dennis Payton. And then you think about the 2000s when we've... But the truth is that since the turn of the century, Dennis Pagan was given 5 years. More than sufficient. Brett Ratton, 5 seasons. Now, there's a strong argument that he should not have been sacked, and that's fair enough. Brett Ratton was hard done by. Brendan Bolton, he had 4 seasons. Then you got Mick Malthouse and David Teague, who are the outliers, but both of those coaching stints were complete train wrecks. So you can't justify keeping them at the club any longer than they actually did, because it was just a complete and utter mess. Michael Voss is now in his 5th season as senior coach. He's been afforded more than enough time and has been afforded more than enough resources and list changes to be able to mark his authority on this club. And unfortunately, the brutal truth is that he's not up to it as a coach. I so wanted him to be up to it as a coach. He left Brisbane in acrimonious fashion. Brisbane had an exodus of players around the same time, Sam Doherty being one of those. And he went to Port Adelaide and was an assistant coach under Ken Hinkley. So when he was given the job in 2022, I so wanted Michael Voss to succeed, as you naturally do. You want your senior coach to succeed. We've shown glimpses of building under David Teague, but it just fell apart. So it was only natural to think that Michael Voss was going to learn his lessons and be able to right the wrongs of where he failed as a coach at the Brisbane Lions. But 5 years down the track, there's no evidence of that. In fact, last year, we had an exodus of senior players who wanted to leave. Jack Silvani. Tom DeConey had a truckload of money thrown at him, so that's fair enough. But here's a hypothetical for you. Last year, if Michael Voss goes, does Charlie Curnow stay? Does Charlie Curnow remain a blue bagger under another senior coach? Now, we're never going to know that question, and you can't go back in time and change. Was Michael Voss responsible for creating a poor and toxic environment, which then stems into game day and totally destroys any confidence that the playing group has out in the field? I was one who was very positive with what I saw in the preseason. You know, a lot of the chatter was that the mood had shifted, that we'd become a fun club. It was a fun environment to be around. Now, I preface that by saying, as I mentioned earlier, this list was never going to be one who was going to contend this year. So the predicament of where we are right now is not really surprising. I'm not surprised that we are sitting at the end of our round 4 game against North Melbourne at 1-3. If anyone thought we're actually going to contend for finals this year, well, I'm sorry, but you were delusional. You were completely delusional. This list, on paper, only looked at best to be a 11th to 16th list and no better. Now, I'll repeat what I said earlier in the podcast. I'm going to have to reassess that. I think we're a bottom 4 side, and there's no two ways about that, unfortunately. The centre bounce attendances. Cripps attended 25 times. George Hewitt, 23 times. Adam Chera, 22 times. Sam Walsh, 13. Jagger Smith, 7. Now, I'm sorry, but with Patrick Cripps and George Hewitt having the same number of centre bounce attendances as Sam Walsh and Jagger Smith combined, that's staggering. That is astounding. And then you wonder why we're getting killed at the clearances. Yes, Mark Pidnett had 39 hitouts, but we got smashed in centre clearances. But I question the coaching staff. How can you not see that? When you're still going in there and doing the same thing and having the same formula in the centre square and it's not working, sure you look at changing it up. Sure you throw an Ainsworth in there. Sure Smith in there more. Walsh. But no, what they do is let's bring back Adam Chera. Yep, let's not play him in the VFL. Let's bring Chera straight back from just yet another soft tissue injury. I'm sorry, but Chera should have been playing VFL today. In what other team does Adam Chera just come straight back in the side? Given his injury history and his form, he does not demand to be a walk-up start off the back of an injury. No, sorry. You go back to the VFL and you earn your spot in the team. But no, let's just pick him and make our midfield even slower than it already is. Crazy stuff, seriously. Crazy stuff. And you wonder why we are one of the slowest sides in the competition. Because that midfield mix is just disgusting at the moment. George Hewitt, now he won the best and fairest last year, and I think that is more an indictment on the list itself last year than on how great he was last year. His first instinct is to handball backwards every single time. It's infuriating. Kick the ball forward. Get some speed on the contest. But he stops and props with ball in hands. He stops and props with ball in hand. And let's just pop the balloon and let all the air go out of any momentum that we might have had at that point in time. Momentum killing stuff. As I said last week, Patrick Cripps getting caught holding the ball, trying to be the hero, trying to do too much. He's guilty of being a momentum killer as well. I think Hewitt going forward either needs to be in the side as a tagger or not. Now, here's another hypothetical for you. End of 2024, we had both Matt Kennedy and George Hewitt essentially fighting for similar positions. You couldn't go into 2025 with both of them. But in hindsight, and hindsight's always wonderful, you can always be spot on with this. I think we persevered with the wrong player. We should have gone forward with Matt Kennedy and offered George Hewitt up for trade. Kennedy's ability to hit the scoreboard and his ability to take a mark overhead as opposed to George Hewitt would have kept him on the list for mine. But alas, Kennedy goes to the Bulldogs, has been playing some good footy over the last 2 years, and George Hewitt is just another plotter in our slow midfield. Love to know your thoughts. You can always head to our socials, the Heatley Stand End on TikTok and also on Instagram. Let me know how you're feeling tonight. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like we can divorce our club. It's a real love-hate relationship at the moment. It's a fucking struggle. It really is. It's just something that's extremely hard to have to cop, despite the fact that you could sort of see what was going to happen at the start of this year. But it doesn't take away the disappointment. It's a feeling of almost like we've got to go back to square one. And in a sense, we almost do. I can't see Michael Voss being coach of Carlton round 1, 2027. That's not going to happen. There is no way that Michael Voss saves his job from here on end. Not a chance in hell. So the question then is, at what point does Graham Wright and the club part ways with Michael Voss? It's been widely reported that Graham Wright made overtures to Craig McRae at the end of last year. Graham Wright denies that. But if he did ask the question, well, he's doing his job. He's doing his due diligence and trying to pry one of the competition's better coaches out of another club. I've got no issue with that. Of course, Graham Wright's not going to admit that publicly because he doesn't want to put the current senior coach in Michael Voss offside. But who I think Graham Wright should be chasing as Carlton's next senior coach is a man by the name of Adrian Hickmott. Now, many of you will say, oh, geez, like, what about John Longmire? What about Adam Simpson? What about even asking the question of Nathan Buckley? I think you need to ask the question of I would say no. Adam Simpson, you look at West Coast in the last few years he was there, they fell off an absolute cliff. I'm sorry, but I'm not touching Adam Simpson at all. Going nowhere near Adam Simpson. Nathan Buckley, he's someone I would engage and have a conversation with, but knowing that Graham Wright was the one that removed him from his post at Collingwood, I don't think that's going to happen. Then you got John Longmire. Now, the question with John Longmire is, does he have the burning ambition and desire to be a senior coach again? Now, if he does, well then that makes him a compelling option. But if he doesn't, then I think Adrian Hickmott is somebody who should be considered and seriously considered. Currently at Hawthorn, he's had stints at West Coast in the past, but he was a no-frills player, tough, uncompromising, not the most elegant of players, but you know what? Time and time again, history has shown that some of the best coaches were never the most elegant of footballers. Kevin Sheedy and Mick Malthouse, two examples. They were both back pocket plotters. They were nowhere near elegant footballers. So Adrian Hickmott is the one I think they should be looking at and having serious conversations with. He was at Essendon in a development role. He was at West Coast for over a decade. He's currently at Hawthorn. And I think just being around a successful environment like Hawthorn, seeing how Sam Mitchell goes about the caper, what we do need at the club, apart from a fresh start with the senior coach, is we need to overhaul our development program. I've spoken to a few AFL commentators, prominent ones, and I'm not going to name them, but they've got the pedigree. They've played in premierships. They've won Brownlow medals. They tell me that one of the biggest issues with Carlton and they tell me that one of the biggest issues with Carlton at the moment and they tell me that one of the biggest issues with Carlton at the moment is our development. Our development pales into insignificance compared to other clubs. Our inability to identify talent and then allow that talent to blossom is just keeping us behind the other clubs. I go back to 2013. I was covering the Northern Bullants, and week in, week out, I would see Kane Lambert dominating the VFL. Adam Marcon as well. He was a great player at that time too. Do you think we even gave Kane Lambert a look in? No. Kane Lambert, right under our noses, was drafted by Richmond, becomes a premiership player. Liam McMahon, a more recent example, kicking goals for Carlton reserves. Now, last year we lose Charlie Curnow. We'd love to have a key forward that we can turn into a bit of a project player and get some senior games into. But no, we don't even pick someone who's kicking goals up in our reserve side. Oh, no, that's all right. We'll just let Essendon draft him. in the mid-season draft. What the fuck are we doing with our development at the Carlton Football Club? It seems even if you pick early draftees like Paddy Dow and Lockie O'Brien, just two that I'll make an example of, they can be highly touted as they want, but if they come into a environment where the development is poor, doesn't matter where they're drafted, they can be the best kid in the land, their careers are not going to blossom as they should. So Graham Wright and Chris Davies are going to need to take a good hard look at how we go about developing and nurturing talent at the Carlton Football Club, because until we get that sorted, we are always going to be playing catch up. I'll just go through a few before finishing up tonight. I'll go through a few individual performances. Will Haywood, poor. 6 disposals for the match. Undisciplined. Gave away 2 free kicks, crucial ones at that, and just had no impact whatsoever. Pathetic. Wade Dirksen, look, worth persisting with. Sort of looked a little bit uncomfortable at times, but offers us depth down back with Wiedering going down. I'm sure Wiedering will be fine for next week unless he's ruled out due to concussion, but we'll wait and see. But I don't think Wade Dirksen is someone who should be dropping straight away. He was not disgraced. Lockie Cowan. I thought he had a reasonable game today. Was poor last week. Better this week. Need to keep playing him. Matt Carroll. 11 kicks, 4 handballs, 80% efficiency. That's what you want. Keep playing Matt Carroll. That's what you want to see. And he provided that spark and that excitement. More of that, please. Jordan Boyd. 14 kicks, 2 handballs at 94%. How on earth does he not get a game more often? Why is it that his paper seems stamped and that he's just shunned to the VFL? He should be playing week in, week out for us. It's not as if we got a rich list of great kickers to choose from. We don't. So if he's one of the few players who can actually kick the football well on the team, bloody hell, pick him. I don't understand that. Must be something other than footballing ability, I think. But we're never going to be able to find out. Elijah Hollands. I had someone in one of my Carlton group chats point out to me that with all of his issues, Elijah Hollands wouldn't have been given another opportunity at another club. Now, look, I take that on board, and perhaps at a Geelong or the Sydney Swans, they might not have given him an opportunity given what he had done. But in saying that, I don't think you can just cast him out in the football scrap heap. In a team where we lack players like Elijah Hollands, I think he was someone worth keeping, albeit so long as he was able to keep his off-field life squeaky clean and turn himself around. And so far, he's been able to do that, and he's probably in the top 5 of our best and fairest at this stage of the season. Patrick Cripps. once again, off the back of his 57% disposal efficiency last week, 71% today, 21 disposals. But, that's all irrelevant bullshit. The amount of disposals he's got just looks slow. Now, I pointed this out last week, but it wasn't so much even being caught holding the ball or anything like that, which he maybe once or twice he got caught today. He just looks like the game's gone past him. And as I said before, you can't really afford to have Chera, Hewitt, and Cripps all in the centre square at the one time, because we're just going to get smashed, run off our feet. Now, 195 centimetres, you'd like to think he can potentially go forward, but he doesn't have a good mark on him. And his goal kicking is not that great either. So can he reinvent himself into a goal kicking option? I'm not too sure. But I think he's going to have to add a few extra strings to his bow if he wants to play another for 3 or 4 years, because right now he's getting absolutely caned in the midfield. And it's only going to get worse as the game gets quicker, as younger players come in from other sides. He's just going to get beaten to the football. I understand it's deflating. It is deflating and it's disappointing. And times like this, when you lose to a side that you shouldn't be losing to, you think, geez, we're in a deep hole and it's going to take a while to climb out of it. But there are examples in football history where teams have shown that they can turn it around very quickly. You look at the Western Bulldogs at the end of 2014 when Brendan McCartney got sacked and they lost their captain. They landed Tom Boyd on big money. 2015, they played finals. 2016, they won a premiership, their first in 62 years. You look at Collingwood. Sacked Nathan Buckley in mid-2021. Graham Wright appoints Craig McRae. And by 2022, they're playing off in a preliminary final and losing to Sydney by a point. It can turn around very quickly, but unfortunately, what's happened is that it's turned to shit very quickly too. It's really hard to imagine that it was less than 2 years ago when we were sitting second on the ladder, heading into round 18, and we were 8-3 up against GWS at quarter time, and after that, it unravelled. I think I saw a stat somewhere where about 11 wins, 24 losses since that game, which is just hard to believe. Anyway, my final message for tonight is be patient. Don't let these shit times knock you down, because as I mentioned earlier, and as I mentioned in the preseason, we've got to start being a little bit more realistic about what this is going to be about. Perhaps it's not even a reset. Perhaps it's more a rebuild. But in any case, we're never contending. So there shouldn't be any surprise from any element of the Carlton supporting public. Until next time, it's good night and go Baggers.